This time, I came prepared. I have my Jeep Wrangler, and I have a can of bug spray. Welcome to Central Wyoming. I was here last year checking out some sites on the Oregon Trail, but I had to skip Rocky Ridge and parting of the ways. I was driving the family SUV, and the roads here are almost impassable when they're wet, and it was raining buckets. So today I'm back with the Jeep, which will go anywhere I point the hood. And to be fair, there were just a few sprinkles last night, so the roads are soft, but not muddy at all. Directions to Rocky Ridge are hard to come by. The Mormon church seems to keep it a secret. So turn off the Atlantic City Road at the Sage Creek Campground. There's a sign off to the side of the road that'll point you to the campground. Follow this road, but not really a road, south to Rocky Ridge. It's a few miles. Don't, and I say this again, don't attempt this in a passenger car if it's raining. You will get stuck. And just like that, here we are. I wasn't expecting it to be this quick. It's really not all that far off of the main road, the Atlantic City Road. I didn't check my mileage, unfortunately. I should have, but they say it was 1.8 miles. I'm sure they're right. But here we are, one of the most treacherous parts of the Oregon Trail. Says the James G. Willie Handcart Company was rescued on October 21st, 1856 by a rescue party sent by Brigham Young. 21 members of the Willie Company perished in this valley due to a severe winter storm and lack of clothing and food. Captain Willie left in search of the rescuers when he returned with the wagons. It is recorded. Cries of joy rent the air. Most of the rescuers and wagons went on to the Martin Handcart Company, which also had become stranded approximately 70 miles east at Martin's Cove. On October 22nd, 1856, deep snows, chilling wind, and starvation resulted in a 27-hour journey over 15 miles of the most difficult portion of the trail to Rock Creek, where an additional 15 pioneers died. This monument is constructed to the memory of those courageous pioneers of the Willie Handcart Company and the brave men who rescued them. Oh, the lighting is awful. Oh boy. Anyway, that's the if you can see it, that's the Sweetwater River Valley way down there, and this is a draw. I don't know that it has a name that the Oregon Trail came up. There's a road down there. Obviously, that's the original trail, and then it comes up through here, right in front of us. And then up past the Jeep and up over the ridge here. It doesn't look like much, but imagine trying to push or pull a hand cart, so basically a giant wheelbarrow full of everything you own, and up this, and you've already gone like 1,000 miles, right? So you're tired, your feet are sore, your legs are spent, you're probably in a bad mood because, yeah, 1,000 miles. And then this, yeah, not all the pioneers came in covered wagons. A lot of them walked, a lot of them had these hand carts. None of them rode their livestock, like they had oxen with them sometimes. If they had a covered wagon, oxen would pull them, but nobody rode, either on the oxen or in the covered wagon. Usually they just walked along. The wagons were chock full of everything they owned. There wasn't really any room for them to ride in it, so they would just walk excuse me, walk along the side of the wagon. So these guys have already walked 1,000 miles when they get here. Here's an Oregon Trail marker. No, this is not original. They put these up in the 20th century. But there, that marks the Mormon Trail. And on this side, it has the Oregon Trail. Some of them also have the California Trail, but that's not on here. Because they all followed the same route, at least this far. A little later in the trip, we'll see the parting of the ways, which is where the California Trail split off from the Oregon Trail. Been fun to pull a hand cart up this. Yikes. I guess this is where the really tough go began. On the Wyoming history website that one of the pioneers in their journals wrote that this road shook some of the wagons to pieces, and I would believe that. And another pioneer wrote that the rocks were kind of like shingles on a house and stacked up on top of each other. Pretty good description. I'm not a geologist and I don't play one on TV, but it looks like the layers of rock you know, underneath the ground basically got tilted and then shoved up and are poking through the surface like this. But man, to get a wagon or a hand cart up this must have been a nightmare. So this is the upper Mormon monument. It says at 7,300 feet above sea level, Rocky Ridge is the highest point on the Mormon and Oregon trails. Interesting, by the side note, interesting that this is higher than South Pass, where it crosses the Continental Divide. Anyway, I'll go on. This elevation, lack of water, and rugged landscape present a challenge to early pioneers. The trail over Rocky Ridge is approximately 2 miles long and ascends over 700 feet in elevation. This ridge was particularly difficult during the 1856 rescue of the Mormon Willey and Martin Handcart companies. The Willey Company crossed Rocky Ridge in severe winter conditions and a state of starvation. Their ascent began on October 22, 1856. It took 27 hours for the journey of 15 miles from the base of Rocky Ridge to Rock Creek. Poor clothing, including worn-out shoes, was the cause of this area being called the Trail of Blood. This is so western. This is another little fun section here that I'm sure the Mormons enjoyed doing in a blizzard. And really any of the Oregon Trail crossers we're really looking forward to. So some quick thoughts on the Mormon Church building these monuments and some of the other sites here along the trail. What they're doing is fantastic. They are preserving history. Motorized traffic is not allowed on Rocky Ridge. That's why I'm walking it. To preserve the trail, and I feel like to them this is a holy site, and so is Martin Cove and Rock Hollow and all that. And really, when you read about the Oregon Trail or study it or whatnot, it's like a treasure trove of tragedy, right? You always are reading about how someone died or a group of people died or something bad happened, right? And the Mormons have kind of changed that narrative with these sites along Rocky Ridge into a tale of bravery and overcoming adversity and whatnot. And that's so Mormon, right? I've never met a Mormon who's like unhappy. They're all like super positive people with great sense of humor. They're fun people to hang out with and to talk with, and they just brighten your day, right? So I think what they're doing there is great. I hope that at the same time they're not whitewashing what happened up here in 1856. With Willey and Martin Handcart companies, they started way too late in the year. They were coming through here in October, which is 4 months later than they should have. And their resupply network broke down. It was a poorly organized, poorly executed trip. In the end, while they're up here celebrating bravery and overcoming adversity, the truth is none of this should have happened. It was 100% entirely preventable. So in the on that monument back there, says that over a stretch of 2 miles, trail gains about 700 feet, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, right? But it's not a gentle, gradual, constant slope. This beast that I'm on right now, this little stretch, this might be half of the 700 feet. And it is a quarter of a mile, maybe. This is freaking steep. Look, I think there might be people over there. Or it could be cows. Those are probably cows. You can do the Atlantic City Road in a passenger car, no problem. It's a slow, rough drive, and it feels rougher in here because of the suspension. In a passenger car, I'm sure it feels like smooth as a 4-lane highway. But when it's wet, stay off of it if you don't have 4-wheel drive. You absolutely need 4-wheel drive when it's wet because it becomes really boggy, marshy. There's some areas where there's some really deep ruts in the mud that you would not be able to get your car out of if you slipped into them. But this is if you're in this part of Wyoming, drive this road. It's really pretty. It just feels very western. Not a tree in sight, lots of rolling hills, and some tremendous views of Wyoming's Wind River Range, which is where some of the tallest mountains in the state are. It's a backpacker's paradise. There's a Wind River Range in front of us there. Very beautiful area. A lot of the mountains over there are well over 13,000 feet, so pretty close to 14,000. And the highest peak in the state, Mount Gannet, if I remember right, is in that range. It is almost 14,000 feet tall.
About 40 miles west of Rocky Ridge is Parting of the Ways. This was a several days journey for the pioneers, but only a couple hours for me over some rough back roads. Getting here is a challenge even in 2021.
Turning onto the trail, there's a marker. Driving the trail in style here. Pioneers would be pretty jealous of me. This is all my camping stuff in the back. I would say no to a passenger car on this road. High clearance only. Probably don't need 4x4 unless it's really muddy. But I probably wouldn't even attempt this road if it's been raining really hard. There was a small shower earlier today through here, but it didn't drop much rain. If it's really rainy, I think this road would be a boggy mess. Probably still do it, but I don't know. Not my definition of a good time. I think this is the exact same monument they have at the false Parting of the Ways. So this is the true Parting of the Ways. And up here, here is where the main branch of the Oregon Trail went to the left, kind of southwesterly, and took with it the California Trail and the Mormon Trail, and then to the right is the Sublette Cutoff. There's another name for it, can't remember. Anyway, and this cutoff saved about 5 or 6 days of travel on the trail, so it was kind of a big deal. The drawback is there's no water for about 50 or 60 miles, so that's also kind of a big deal. And I'm sure you're saying to yourself, Steve, why in God's name did the trail split here in the middle of nowhere? And by middle of nowhere, you are not wrong. So why this is here, I don't know. I don't know why it didn't split at Pacific Springs or South Pass or something like that. So it was here that a lot of old friends and new friends said goodbye to each other. The people going to California typically went that way, or to Utah, they went that way. People going to Oregon, about 30 or 40% of them went that way. Folks to the left, I guess, were out trying to find riches, you know, in the California gold rush. People to the right were just trying to find a new home in a new land. And generations later, they've become Portland Trailblazers fans. So I guess it just goes to show that we can't all leave a positive legacy. I read that a lot of people would leave letters or stones with something scribbled on them, and they'd leave them right in here in this pile, so that later, when people would when later wagon trains came by, they would read about the folks who were ahead of them, maybe catch up on some news, maybe they made some friends when they were camping in Independence Rock or something, and a party got an early start, and so they wanted to leave a message for the folks who got a later start that all was well or whatnot. But interesting, the forms of communication on the trail. When I took a walk down the branches, I walked down the main, I'm walking on the main branch right now. I walked down the cutoff a little bit ago. I just can't get over the isolation here. I mean, for miles in any direction, there's nothing. Absolutely nothing. Not a person, not a power line. Like, no sign of civilization except for the BLM marker and my Jeep. Otherwise, I feel like I have the entire West to myself. I'm sure this is not much unlike what the pioneers experienced and felt when they were traveling through here. Except to them, they've been, you know, traveling about 1,000 miles of this at this point, so they were probably like walking through here saying, just more of the same. More isolation, more loneliness, more nothing. folks, parting of the ways. All right, this is Oregon Buttes Road. It's a turn off of the main highway, almost at the exact top of the highway crossing of South Pass. That's how you get to the old South Pass road. Pardon me, cows. Alright, I am turning off of this relatively recently constructed, horribly washboardy, absolutely terrible Oregon Buttes Road. And now I'm going to turn on to this 180-year-old, relatively smooth Oregon Trail. And we're heading up to South Pass. This is like so much better than the main road. That is it, just up in front of us, the very inauspicious top of South Pass, the lowest crossing of the Continental Divide. This sucker really opened up westward expansion. If South Pass hadn't been so easy to get across, probably not so many people would have ever have tried this trip. Park over here. And then this is just a marker to commemorate the first women to cross. This is not a grave marker, and no, this is not original. These women and their party were more interested in crossing the continent than putting up a big stone marker to commemorate their achievement. I don't know when this was put in place, but much, much later. So this basically says, even after the rediscovery of South Pass in 1824, it was years before the route was used extensively. Captain Benjamin Bonneville took the first wagons over South Pass in 1832. But it was Lieutenant John C. Fremont, who is responsible for publicizing the South Pass route. In 1842, he created enthusiasm for it by explaining that a traveler could go through it without any toilsome ascents. Then, as knowledge of South Pass became widespread, a great western migration commenced. Thousands of Mormons and future Oregonians and Californians would cut a wide swath along the route in the next 20 years. I'm going to head on down to Pacific Spring, which, as its name suggests, was the first source of water on the Pacific side of the Oregon Trail. It was a big campground area for the travelers, source of water, rest stop, that kind of thing. There was even like a
The actual springs are on marshy land north of the buildings. You can't get to it because of a barbed wire fence. I thought there'd be mosquitoes everywhere around here. After all, last year I had swarms of the damn things attacking me and I wasn't even close to water. But my luck dictates that I only have something when I don't need it. And sure enough, there's not a mosquito anywhere around here. I spend an hour here in this swampy valley and I never see even one. Visiting Pacific Springs marked the end of my explorations of this part of the Oregon Trail. On my way home, I have to drop in to see a very, very old friend. This is the gravesite of Frederick Fulkerson, who died on this part of the Oregon Trail in 1847. I spent a good deal of time researching his story for my first Oregon Trail blog. His story had a lasting impact on my perspective of the past. What Frederick considered the future, I consider history. The folks who died on Rocky Ridge or those who bid goodbye to each other at Parting of the Ways never once thought of themselves as historical. Some think of history as stale words and dusty books, but I think it's more personal than that. Our present is already someone else's past. The past, the present, the future, it's all the same. How we see it just depends on who we are. I intended to spend this weekend learning about the past. I think I've learned more about the present instead.